In the opening scene, a man is inside a large cube made up of several compartments. Seeking escape, he ventures through different compartments. At one point he enters a room where an unknown liquid is sprayed on him. At first, I was surprised because I thought it was sour, but when I tried it, I thought it was cute. Thinking it's flavored water, the man drinks it desperately to quench his thirst. Unfortunately, however, the liquid turned out to be a powerful chemical base that dissolved his entire body within minutes, ultimately leading to his death. It is then discovered that every room in the cube is constantly monitored from a remote monitoring room where his two technicians named Eric and Dodd work. They do not know the manager's identity and are strictly prohibited from accessing non-work-related files. Despite this limitation, Eric becomes increasingly interested in what is going on in the cube and tries to check with Dodd about it. However, he rudely dismisses him. Eric and Dodd realize, based on their knowledge, that everyone in the cube is either sentenced to death or willingly chooses to participate in psychological experiments. At work, the two technicians regularly participate in chess games, and Eric demonstrates his superior mental arithmetic skills by predicting Dodd's moves. In addition to work, they receive several tablets with meals. One day, Eric and Dodd are tasked with recording and erasing the memories of a person named Cassandra Rains. In her memory, Eric witnesses Cassandra and her daughter happily walking through the woods. However, their peace is suddenly disrupted when masked soldiers abduct them and inject them with tranquilizers. Before fainting, Cassandra manages to reveal the soldier's face, revealing a distinct dice tattoo on his forehead. She later regained her consciousness and was trapped within her cube. She calls for her help, but she predictably cannot hear anyone. Realizing that her destiny is in her own hands, Cassandra finally begins to explore her surroundings. She managed to reach the next room, but upon entering it was thrown to the ground by another inmate named Robert Haskell. He holds her until he realizes she is one of them. In that room, Cassandra meets her three other residents, Jericho, Meyerhold, and Bartok. Looks like she's been trapped here for weeks. Amazingly, Robert has the same dice tattoo as the soldier who captured Cassandra. However, none of the members of the group have memories of their previous lives or how they got here. Motivated by a shared desire to escape, they resolve to head in the same direction together in hopes of finding a vantage point. As a result, the prisoners move through the cube's intricate rooms, carefully testing each room for potential traps. First, Bartok throws his shoes and waits for signs of danger. Seeing nothing unusual, he assumed the room was safe and went inside. Unfortunately, his assumptions prove fatal. Soon he is entangled in a web of threads that gradually thickens and mutilates his body. After a horrifying incident, the remaining victims continue to search for a way out. After a short discussion, they learn that all the doors of the cube had the English alphabet written on them. Cassandra concludes that these alphabets actually represent coordinates, providing information about each spatial position within the cube. They speculate that the cube has a total of 26 spaces, which correlates with the number of letters in the English alphabet. Based on this realization, the group began investigating other rooms, finding that those along the Z-axis were considered safe. Meanwhile, in the control room, Eric becomes curious and determined to find out why humans are trapped inside the cube. He then makes a proposal, offering to teach Dodd various chess strategies in exchange for information on dice. Dodd was intrigued by the proposal and shared details about his third auxiliary exit for the cube, but declined to give further details. In the next scene, Eric's curiosity is heightened when he realizes that Cassandra's consent form is missing. He quickly informs Dodd, telling him that everything they are doing is illegal, but Dodd again rejects him. Her attention is then drawn to a photograph of Cassandra in a newspaper, which exposes her as a politician. This revelation makes Eric realize that the cube targets not only criminals, but also innocent people without their consent. Shortly thereafter, Eric and Dodd receive a call from their boss instructing them to complete the resignation process. It turns out that the surgery involved her former colleague Owen. Owen is currently working as a test subject on the cube. To do this, Dodd prepared a machine with a camera and a yes/no button. As Owen approaches one of the cube's exits, he is caught in thick chains. At this crucial moment, Dodd asks Owen a few questions, asking him about his name and faith in God. Despite hearing Dodd's voice, Owen does not recognize him, suggesting that his memory has also been erased. He answered his first question correctly, prompting Dodd to hit the yes button. However, when faced with a second question, Owen denies his belief in God and is prompted to press the no button. At that moment, he was engulfed in flames and died instantly. Witnessing all this, Eric panics as he realizes a similar fate could happen to them at any moment. He comes to the disturbing conclusion that the existence of the cube is inhumane and that people are being forced into it against their will. A few hours later, Eric becomes so paranoid that he decides to board the cube himself. He now wants to save the remaining victims from impending doom. To do this, he takes an unauthorized elevator and travels to the cube. Eric then uses his wealth of local knowledge to draw a map and memorize it before joining Cassandra and the rest of the group. Meanwhile, a supervisor named Jax arrives at the control room with a staff member. They learn that Eric has entered the cube and use a tracking machine to track his whereabouts. Meanwhile, Jax orders Dodd to initiate a standard series of needle tests on Cassandra and the rest of the group. Elsewhere in the cube, Jericho takes the initiative to investigate the room. She doesn't want to do it, but she has no other choice. Unfortunately, she turned out to be the wrong decision. The door suddenly closed behind her as soon as she was inside. Cassandra rushes to open the door, but to her surprise, Jericho is already gone. This disturbing event indicates that the cube's interior chambers are in constant flux. As Jericho explores the room, Dodd finds him and injects him in his leg with a tranquilizer to stun him. After hours of searching, Cassandra and the group finally find Jericho lying motionless. Meyerhold cautiously approaches her and she turns over, but she finds her body infected with an infection. At that moment, Jericho woke up and hugged Meyerhold to ask for her help. However, in a defensive action, Meyerhold pushes her away and she accidentally hits her head against the wall. This leads to her death, but Ms. Meyerhold soon finds that his hand has been scratched as she clings to him. Unfortunately, the infection spreads through his body before he can react. Robert realizes the potential danger he poses and suggests leaving Meyerhold behind. He claims the man will only slow her down or even infect her for her bad. Despite all this, Cassandra insists that the poor man cannot be abandoned. When Meyerhold begins to plead, Robert agrees, but with the condition that all other rooms be inspected before the group enters. With no other choice, Meyerhold reluctantly agrees and the group continues their journey. In the next scene, Meyerhold checks the room below, but Robert suddenly pushes Meyerhold down. The room was found to be enclosed and emitting an incredible high-frequency sound. Unfortunately, this causes Meyerhold to die within seconds. As expected, Cassandra expresses her disappointment and gets into a heated argument with Robert. She calls him a traitor who only thinks of himself. When things got hot, Eric walked into the room. She claims Robert was right because the virus was so contagious. Eric then introduces himself as an employee and reveals secret information about the cube. He explains that residents volunteered to participate in the experience even though they don't remember. But Robert angrily claims that he never signed the consent form and that he committed no crime. He says he was a hard-working delivery man before he was kidnapped. In fact, Robert has no memory of his previous life. Cassandra, meanwhile, asked about her daughter and she prompted Robert to share some sketches he had made. He claims to have seen the girl in his memory. An overwhelmed Cassandra loses control and attacks him, but Robert stops her and reminds her that she needs the man. Eric also assures them that he is here to help, as he can analyze the coordinates and direct them to a third secondary exit. Meanwhile, Jax's friends identify Eric's whereabouts and display the information on the monitor. In response, Jax orders all of the room's coordinates to be erased and the inhabitants to be entrapped. After successfully locking her in a room, Jax activates a wall charge that could kill her. However, a sudden power outage cuts the connection to the cube. It turns out that it was he who Dodd suddenly changed his mind and sabotaged the operation. This action disables all traps in the room and initiates reset mode. Prisoners are now given 10 minutes of escape time before sterilization begins and everything inside evaporates. Eric quickly realizes that Dodd has helped them, sets a 10-minute countdown timer on his clock, and leads the group to the exit. Jax learns of Dodd's betrayal and control and kills him as punishment. He then gains access to a chip implanted in Robert's brain and gains control over Robert's body. Jax then manipulates the programming, ordering Robert to eliminate the others before they can safely escape from the cube. On his orders, Robert turns against his former allies and launches a brutal attack. However, Eric and Cassandra work together and manage to defeat him. The two then depart, eventually arriving at the exit room where Robert is waiting. He attacks them again and nearly strangles Eric. Luckily, Cassandra came to his aid and impaled him with a sharp metal object, eventually killing him. The two then rush into the auxiliary exit just before the sterilization process begins. Eric and Cassandra then swim underwater and out into the lake. They escape through a forest that is eerily similar to what Cassandra remembered earlier. Unfortunately, Jax's soldiers also arrive in the woods and start chasing them. Unfortunately, Eric was captured calmly during the chase. However, he managed to hold off his soldiers for a moment and let Cassandra escape before he lost consciousness. Eric then regains consciousness and finds himself in the operating room. There, Jax reveals that Eric was convicted of treason and agreed to participate as a test subject. Jax also draws up an agreement signed by Eric, which Eric doesn't remember. After this exposure, the surgeon begins remodeling Eric's brain. He dreams of Cassandra reuniting with his daughter and praising him as a superhero. In the final scene, a mentally disturbed Eric is held in a cube, where he is discovered by new prisoners. He keeps mentioning the color of the room and expresses a desire to go back to another color room. Oana,